Welcome to Dancin Moon Songcast. I'm Scott Simpson, casting from Dancin Moon Studio in Spearfish Canyon on the north end of the Black Hills of South Dakota, right on the banks of the Spearfish Creek. If you'd like to follow along, you can download a free PDF from my lyric book from scottsimpsonmusic.com/lyrics, and of course you can find links to all my music there as well. So let's get casting and find out what song we're going to talk about this time. In this week's episode, this may be a kind of a longish episode. We're going to take a look at a song that is a pivotal song in my own growth, and really, just fair warning, we're going to get into some theological issues here. I'm not alone, I'm certain, in having moved through some disillusionment with some of the religious community and ideas that I grew up in. This particular song certainly highlights strong elements of that, so we'll get into that. Maybe it'll be helpful for you if you've been through something similar. The song is Reckless Resurrected, the Reckless Resurrected, which first came out in 2005's Before the Great Divide, which the album as a whole really dealt with a lot of that disillusionment. And that album is no longer available, but it is available as a double album remastered in 2015 called Circuitous and the Before the Great Divide. Double album there that combined two earlier albums that only came out on CD and weren't ever released digitally. So we'll take a listen to The Reckless Resurrected from Circuitous and Before the Great Divide, and we're going to actually listen to two versions of it, but this one, first one we'll listen to is the main version. We'll listen to a remix later in the episode. We'll listen to it and then talk about a lot of stuff on the other side.
Down to the river just to find myself, but I was not there. Into the forest to hear your voice, but the aspen were still bare. Oh my God, what have I done with the spirit you breathed into me, which is a reckless resurrected, don't know we're free, and we don't know we're free. You can't live your life in a minefield. Everyone wrong doesn't make you right. You can argue your point even when the war began. It won't bring the dead back to life. Oh my God, what have I done with the spirit you breathed into me, which is a reckless resurrected, we don't know we're free. Yeah, we don't know we're free. Look around you now, see the springtime's here. Easter's come and gone. Water's high and the apple blossoms gather round us. Yeah, summer's coming on. And even when the night is stormy. There's a still, quiet voice bringing peace. Sing this song until the rising of the sun. Oh, let it rise, yeah, let it be. Oh my God, what have I done? It's your spirit you breathed into me. We're just a reckless resurrected. Go on, teach us to be free. The Lord, teach us to be free. Yeah, yeah. Down to the river just to find myself. Jesus met me there. Into the forest to hear your voice. All the trees were filled with prayer. Oh my God, what have I done? It's your spirit breathe into me. We're just a reckless resurrected, and we're learning to be free. Yeah, we're learning to be free. Go on, teach us to be free. Teach us to be free.
So that is the main version of Reckless Resurrected from Circuitous. And Before the Great Divide, 2015. There is another remix version on that same double album. In fact, it closes out the album at the very end. We'll listen to that at the end of the episode, and I'll talk about why there are two versions there. Well, it's been a long time coming. I felt like, what am I going to do when I come to that song? Because there's a lot of disclosure and a lot of things to talk about that maybe you won't relate to, and that's all right. If this is not the episode for you, that's fine. This may be very, very interesting for some of you, though. Reckless Resurrected. So, and I've mentioned a few of these things before, but I'll mention what you need to know to understand what we're going to talk about today. For a time being, I was for a couple of years, 3 years total, really, 2 summers. I was a camp director for a youth camp, a very large youth camp, church-connected youth camp, connected with the church, the particular church that I grew up in. And I'll leave that nameless. I'm not interested in. I mean, you can probably figure it out, but if you want to dig around. But anyway, I'll leave the name of the camp and the particular denomination nameless. But what I will say about it is this: in 2005, when this song was written, I was I was fired painfully from that camp, and it impacted me, impacted my whole family. It was really difficult. And the main reason for that is that, and this is the reason given, I think, officially by the people at the camp. We had a difference in vision, and I suppose to unpack that a little bit, they're absolutely right. It was governed by a large board of men, fairly conservative, and from a lot of smaller churches in a couple of southern states, and they really saw themselves as kind of holding the line on their brand, very conservative, very doctrinally tight, very biblically based, as they would put it, Christianity. Via the camp, the camp was a place for that to be strengthened and enforced. But the reality of that was that there was a lot of arguing. There were a lot of people who would come voluntarily from various different congregations around a very large region, and some of them from churches that were very, 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 very conservative, and others from congregations that were yes, conservative, but on the more progressive end of conservative, if you kind of maybe centrist a little bit, sort of. But what would happen is, and I was, of course, remember, director, these battles would well up around a particular issue. Quite often the issues were things that you would probably guess. Things having to do with women's roles in the church. This was a particular church that women had some particular roles that they could occupy, and others that they definitely could not occupy. And most of those were the leadership roles that they could not occupy. And other things around issues concerning homosexuality, concerning interpretation of Scripture, and in a lot of ways, even concerning how you sing. There were groups that were so conservative that they felt like singing. Clapping while singing would be a sinful thing. So anyway, there was just a real variety of folks who were coming together, and it just felt like as the song mentions, a minefield. I had definitely grown up in that, but this particular camp, because it attracted folks from a wide variety across the spectrum, a narrow, very conservative spectrum, but nonetheless across a spectrum of congregations, it was a ripe place for all of these disputes and battles. And because I was probably on the further than even centrist end of things, probably on the progressive end of things, that's where that difference in vision came in, and that's where the end of my time there and our family's time there happened. It was a lovely, lovely place, though, in so many ways. In the Rockies, just absolutely lovely. And I would go over. We didn't live there year round, but I would go over in early April. And I would spend a number of weeks preparing, getting ready, planning for the summer, getting things physically ready, but also getting myself mentally ready and spiritually ready, and preparing the direction of things. And it was a lovely, 2 or 3 weeks of mostly solitude. And hiking, and prayerful planning, and also songwriting. which is when this song was written, during that time period, prior to the 2005 camp season. And already in this song, my disillusionment was coming. It would be the end of that summer when all hell would break loose, and then eventually I would be released, fired. So already at the beginning of the summer, I had an anticipation of this shift. At this point, it was not personalized. I didn't realize how difficult it would be between people, friends, folks I respected, and that relational part of these sorts of battles is the most painful part, I would say. But already at the beginning of the summer, I knew the shift that I had definitely made. I could name what was frustrating me, and had been frustrating me for some time, but finally was coming sort of to a head. So we'll talk a little bit about, and as I said, by the way, that entire album, Before the Great Divide, that album in many ways deals with this whole situation. But this particular song deals with really the theological, ideological side of it. And I hope that'll become clear as we delve into it. Sorry, I got a dry throat today. Had to take a sip of coffee. So let's start with the title, The Reckless Resurrected. Well, resurrected gives you an idea. That's kind of a churchy term. We don't use the word resurrected, resurrection, resurrect very often, other than in the context of Christian religion. And so that lets you know right there that what kind of category we're entering into. Reckless. I remember one time when I was in high school, I think, I asked my English teacher, it doesn't really make sense. Like when someone has a wreck, they say they were reckless. I mean, that's crazy. And of course, I occasionally have been and still am slightly spelling challenged. But she pointed out, no, the root word of reckless is not wreck. It's wreck as in reckoning, to reckon, to understand. You see, someone who has a wreck is reckless because they didn't have a reckoning. They didn't have an understanding of what was going on. And when you go at a high speed in life without knowing what the heck is going on, you're reckless, but you're bound to have a wreck. And so that stuck with me. So that, anyway, when I was thinking about some of these ideas, those two words came together, reckless and resurrected. And it really gets at the heart, I think, of the difference. And we'll talk a little bit about at least two, but I mean, this is far more complex than some didactic this or that, but examples of two very different ways of understanding what's going on in Christian religion, but I think in spirituality and religion as a whole. So we'll get into that. Resurrected obviously refers to a number of things. In much of the Christian tradition, it simply refers to, one, the fact that there was a foundational belief that Christ, Jesus, died, was buried, and then came back to life, and that's the resurrection. In a broader sense, there's also the sense that he was what is called in Scripture the first fruits of that resurrection. So the rest of us, all the rest of us, in some way, by virtue of that resurrection of his, will be resurrected. And that's where we'll kind of get into the theological difference. Because it's one thing to see that activity as some sort of transaction, i.e., there's a God above who has to have, who is very absolute about justice, and sin is the consequences are death, and so this God of justice has to have a death, has to have a pound of flesh, has to have some blood before that sin can be forgiven. And therefore, he was nice enough to accept, or really to kill his own son rather than putting to death the rest of humanity. A very transactional thing. So therefore, my salvation is based on Christ, God accepting his own son's death and blood in replace of mine. So it's almost like God's kind of this kind of mindless, I got to have this for that. I got my blood, so okay, that's fine. It's all covered. So go ahead. Which never really made a great deal of sense to me. And it has some other serious problems with it, in that if we believe that God is a God of love, why would a God of love demand a payment, okay, for something done wrong by those that he or she loves? And my tradition would say, well, you don't even need to be questioning that. That's just the way it is. But everything in the teachings of Christ says that we would forgive, says that we would turn the other cheek, says that we return cursing with blessing. And yet God the Father has to have the blood. Okay, so the other problematic thing is that what kind of justice does it make for the death and blood of someone completely innocent to pay for someone who's not innocent? That's what made it. So there's the problem there. On the one hand, with what I'd call transactional Christianity, a transactional view of what this whole Christ on the cross thing is. And I know this is going to get long, so you heard my apology at the beginning, and we're going to get into the song lyrics in just a moment, but I think this is foundational. So what's the alternative? I'll give you one of the clearest, simplest quotes that I can, and it's from Richard Rohr, who you should check out. He is Catholic, and we're not talking about Catholicism here. That's not the tradition I grew up in, but he, of course, is certainly on the progressive end of that spectrum. He suggests, and listen to this statement carefully, that Christ's death on the cross didn't happen in order to change God's view of humanity, but rather to change humanity's view of God. I'll say that again. Christ's death on the cross was not to change God's view of humanity, but to change humanity's view of God. You see, I grew up understanding this sort of equation. I am sinful. We're all sinful. God cannot bear sin. He can't stand it. It disgusts him. It's filthy. He cannot look at us until Christ died and gave us a coating of blood through which, when God looks at me through Christ's blood, he suddenly sees me as being pure. That's what I grew up with, when I was going to camp and stuff. Okay, so fundamentally what that says is God sees me in a really gross, negative way until Jesus died on the cross. And then God was able somehow, I don't understand it, but somehow he was able then to look at me and love me. Now that's foundationally different than the idea that Christ's death on the cross was to change my capacity to see God, which makes perfect sense. Okay, we've had centuries of humans thinking the gods hate us, the gods are angry with us, they sent this horrible storm, they sent this awful plague, half of our people died with this disease, they must be angry, let's kill some animals and give them, because they must like blood. So let's kill a bunch of animals and let's get all the blood that we can and send it to the gods and just pray for days and days and days and hope that they get happy with us. And then, the next year we have a good year and we think, oh, wow, they must really like that. So we'll just keep that up. Let's kill more animals and sacrifice. And so there's this whole human idea that God or the gods really are disgusted with us. So we just have to keep trying to do something to appease them. But then what Jesus does is he comes along and in the image and in the teachings of love your enemy, bless those who curse you, turn the other cheek, do good for those who do evil toward you, and in a life lived in which he ends that life by accepting a death sentence that he does not deserve in the midst of his teachings about love for your enemy, and saying, if you've seen me, when you see me doing this, that's not me, that's what God's like. Suddenly, humanity has the capacity to say, oh, God really does love us. God loves us so much that even when we screw up, he still loves us. God loves us so much that he's ready to forgive me for any kind of garbage that I do. He just wants me to stop doing garbage, to stop hurting myself and others around me. And that's what the message of the cross is. The message of the cross isn't you were filthy and God was disgusted with you, but now just because of Jesus, he's able to love you. No, the message of the cross is God has always loved you. You've had this little problem as human beings for a long time, thinking that you're disgusting and unlovable and that and the gods must be angry with you because that's why garbage happens. That's not true. Garbage happens because garbage happens, and people oftentimes treat each other like garbage. I'm trying to help you stop doing that so you stop hurting yourself and stop hurting each other. That's a fundamentally different way of looking at Christianity, at looking at the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and in turn, at looking at what resurrection would mean in my life. Now, the first version, the transactional version, which much of Christianity is still stuck in this, is very afterlife focused. In other words, resurrection means when I die, I get to go to heaven and not hell, which is a very oversimplified sort of idea. It's also an idea that is completely forward-looking and not in a positive way. It's forward looking in that it doesn't place me right here where I am. To see that resurrection means living into a fundamentally different way of living, a fundamentally different way of being, a way that's not retribution all the time, a way that's not evening the score, a way that is loving for those that I love who are nice to me, but also for those, as best as I can, who are not nice to me. Loving because love is my nature, not because the other deserves it. That's the kind of resurrection that I believe Christ is pointing to. A new way of being in the world, in this world. Okay? It does have implications after death, but it has implications most importantly right now, right here, how I engage, how I interact with you, with others, with people around the globe, right here in my time, in my place. And it impacts it powerfully because it's transformative. It causes me to be free. Which is the point of the song. If my view of myself and God is very transactional, then my religion is, oh, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, do this, do that, do this other thing, make sure you do that, make sure you take this political step, make sure you say that thing, make sure you don't go too long without doing this, and make sure you do this a certain number of times every day. Or else you could lose it. You could displease this God of justice who used to couldn't stand looking at me because I was so sinful, but he's going to forgive me, but only if I keep doing. Okay, instead of that, it becomes a freedom. I serve a God who loves me, recognizes I fall short. Therefore, I can love the people around me and treat them generously and with grace, even when they fall short. And I can learn to do that. And I can get better at doing that as I grow. But that's not the state of so many of our churches. So let's get into the song, all right? I have to, I'm sorry, there's just a little more preamble. And this is an interesting little thing about the song. This is not, this album, this double album, Circuitous and Before the Great Divide, is a double album of remastered tracks, okay, which means I took those original tracks from the CD way back in the day, from the 2 CDs way back in the day, and I remastered them. I tweaked them a little bit with EQ and some other things and made them a little bit better before I released them digitally. And that is true for every song on this double album except for this one. You see, this one had a fundamental problem because early on when I wrote this song, and when we get to this part in the song, we'll take a look. Early on, I did a little homage to the Beatles, right there in the middle of the song, and it went beyond homage. It went toward actually quoting about 4 lines from Let It Be, which, as I was looking at re-releasing these digitally and talked with a couple of folks, I realized that could get me sued. And therefore, my intent to honor the Beatles was something I needed to hold on to, but in a less direct fashion. So therefore, I rewrote a little section of the song. So this is not remastered from anything. When I did this double album remastered, this particular song and the remix of it, which we'll listen to later, were both brand new. They're the same song, but they were brand new. I recorded them freshly with the new lyrics. So there we have that. Okay, let's get into the lyrics, and we'll kind of pull this apart and talk a little bit about some of the implications, and then we'll listen to the other version as well. Reckless Resurrected. Down to the river just to find myself, but I was not there. Into the forest to hear your voice, but the aspen were still bare. Oh my God, what have I done with the spirit you breathed into me? We're just the reckless resurrected. Don't know we're free. Okay, so I'm up here in the Rockies, in the beautiful Rockies. We got a beautiful creek running through, two actually running through the camp. And I'm spending a lot of time down at the river. And the river is where a lot of baptisms happen. And so it's a place for a resurrection, for renewal. I went down to the river to find myself, but I was not there. I went into the forest to hear your voice, but the aspen were still bare. I'm there to connect, seeking connection with the Creator, with God. And sometimes it's difficult. And what makes it difficult, ironically, is this whole way of trying to connect. How do you go and peacefully connect with a God who you see as disgusted with you until his own son died, and then he's okay? How does that make a relationship? How does that connect me? How does that even make sense? How would I deal with another human being who was like that? They can forgive me as long as somebody else died? And so then the chorus brings on this realization. Oh my God, what have I done with the spirit you breathed into me? You see, Genesis tells us this story that we came to life when God breathed from his nostrils into us and brought us to life. And the scholars, the theologians would say, both Jewish and Christian would say, there's more than just him, doing CPR. There is God placing a piece of his spirit. The word spirit has to do with breath. Placing a piece of his spirit inside me that is there, that is my life force within me. And if that is true, and if that spirit, as the Bible, the New Testament tells us, if God is love, then that spirit inside me is love. So why can't I know that? If I have been resurrected to a new whole life that is characterized by love, why am I reckless of it? Why can I not recognize that? And I would suggest it is these theologies, these doctrines, these religiosities that we manufacture and create and then compete with. It's like there's some kind of big theology competition. You create your doctrine and then go into the arena and battle it out with it. I mean, my tradition was fraught with debates and battles and disagreements and arguments. And I'm not saying there's not something positive about coming together and having a little bit of a debate, but my goodness, did God come to, did Christ die so that we could have more battles? So we could dislike each other more? So that we could be more divided? That's hard to swallow. So, verse 2. You can't live your life in a minefield. Everyone wrong doesn't make you right. You can argue your point, even win the war. It won't bring the dead back to life. Oh my God, what have I done with the spirit you breathed into me? We're just the reckless resurrected. We don't know we're free. So once again, this reference to the minefield, I felt like there at the camp, I was living in a minefield. There were so many things that you could say that would be taken wrong. There were so many things that you had to watch out for. And if you caught somebody doing them, you got to stomp it down. You got to jump on it. And the idea was that if we can stamp out, like whack-a-mole, stamp out everything that's wrong, it's going to show that I'm right, which is just utter baloney. Showing that everybody else is wrong does not make me right. It just shows that I'm a nasty, negative, judgmental person. You can argue your point. You can even win that argument. But that doesn't bring the dead back. That doesn't bring resurrection. That doesn't change things. Winning the argument, proving the other guy wrong, doesn't save lives. It doesn't change lives. It doesn't bring love. Following verse. Look around you now. See, the springtime's here. Easter's come and gone. The water's high and the apple blossoms gather round. Summer's coming on. So here I am in this beauty. In this creation, this thing that some theologians have called the first gospel, the first good news, the first word of God released, the inspiration. We got it in the natural world, and then later we got Scripture. But the natural world speaks of love, of blessing, of goodness, of gifts, of beauty. And it speaks of that, in that sense, it speaks of that true resurrection. It speaks of benevolence, of grace, of giving without expecting, in so many ways. If you see that, I mean, I know you can look and you can see cruelty in the natural world. I understand that. But I think even in our interpretations of Darwin, survival of the fittest sorts of interpretations, we've been excessively negative. It's more about community. It's more about selflessness. It's more about when I die, it feeds your new life. As we, as a herd, look out for one another, we protect our young. We protect our vulnerable. So then we move on to the next part, which is the part that I had to rewrite. And even when the night is stormy, there's a still, quiet voice bringing peace. Sing this song until the rising of the sun. Oh, let it rise. Yeah. Let it be. Oh my God, what have I done? It's your spirit you breathed into me. We're just the reckless resurrected. Teach us to be free. And so in this rewritten little segment here, these 4 lines, even when the night is stormy, even when it's difficult, and I was entering into a difficult summer, there's a still quiet voice that brings peace. And it's connected with what went just before, that natural environment, where you can hear God. And I'm not suggesting that there's not value in all of the theologies and all of the writings of all the great scholars and religious folks and all of that. I'm not saying there's no value in that, but I'm saying that you can get lost in it in a way that you cannot get lost in an apple blossom. You cannot get lost in a creek, in a river's flow, in a sunrise. You cannot get lost in that. Oh, I suppose you can get lost, but you can get lost in a good way. So those are the lines I did rewrite. I varied what I was doing a little bit from I think what I think it was Paul McCartney what he wrote. But I did end with "Let It Be." I figured if they want to sue me for having those three words together, so goes it. So then we have a little instrumental in there, and then we move on toward the end of the song. Down to the river just to find myself, which I think that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to find ourselves. We're trying to figure out who am I, and what am I supposed to do, and what is valuable about me. Jesus met me there. Into the forest to hear your voice. And the trees were filled with prayer. So here at the end, as I go to find myself, having let go of this transactional version of Christianity, I'm finally at a place where I can meet Jesus. The Jesus that is love. The Jesus that says, I will turn my cheek. I will love my enemy. I will give up my life. I will do something good for you at cost to myself. Now you do that for others. Or you go into the forest and you hear the voice of God. The trees are filled with prayer. Every blossom, every leaf, every gust of wind, a prayer working both ways, in and out. The Creator to me to the Creator. Oh my God, what have I done? It's your Spirit you breathed into me. We're just the reckless resurrected, and we're learning to be free. We're learning to be free. So those are the lyrics. We could talk about the music a little bit, I suppose. The music, I really love this chord progression. I love the finger picking that I figured out. It was such a, there's something very meditational about finger picking on the guitar and about finding a chord progression like that. And then letting it suggest the words to you, which is how this song was written. The instrumentation is very simple, and very lovely. And in this version, my wife sings harmonies, which brings me to why there is another mix. So when I work, I kind of tend to work fast and in a furious way. So I had put together this new song, and I was waiting for my wife, who was busy working to do some harmonies, and so I was still continuing to tweak with it. I had played her, and she was the song, and she was excited about doing it. But then I continued to work on it and was changing things and dropping things out and adjusting the tempo and redoing the main vocals that I had recorded. And then I started recording some harmonies in my impatience. And I do blame myself. I started recording harmonies and did a version of the song that was very different. So then when she was ready to do some of the harmonies, she said, "Oh, what happened to the other? What's this?" I was ready to go with that first one. And so what I decided is, let's do two versions. And so we have this version that you've listened to, which is a lovely version, the main version, with my wife's incredible harmonies. And then we have the other version that comes at the very end of the second album, which is called the Growly Mix, because it's me, and it's me growling out some harmonies that are a little high. It's much faster paced and a little bit higher energy, a little less relaxed. And so we'll take a listen to that to kind of close things out, and then I'll come back and we'll wrap things up. So this is the growly mix of Reckless Resurrected from Circuitous and Before the Great Divide.
Down to the river just to find myself, but I was not there. Into the forest to hear your voice, but the aspen were still bare. Oh my God, what have I done with the Spirit you breathed into me? We're just a reckless resurrected, don't know we're free. You can't live your life in a minefield. Everyone wrong doesn't make you right. You can argue your point even when the war, won't bring the dead back to life. Oh my God, what have I done with the Spirit you breathed into me? We're just a reckless resurrected, we don't know we're free. We don't know we're free, no. Look around you now, see the springtime's here. Easter's come and gone. The water's high and those apple blossoms gather round us, the summer's coming on. When the night is stormy, there's a still quiet voice bringing peace. Sing this song till the rising of the sun. Oh, let it rise, let it be. Oh my God, what have I done? It's your Spirit breathed into me. We're just a reckless resurrected. Come on, teach us to be free. Come on, teach us to be free. I wanna break free. Down to the river just to find myself. Jesus met me there. Into the forest to hear your voice. All the trees were filled with prayer, Oh my God, what have I done? It's your Spirit you breathe to me. Yeah. We're just a reckless resurrected, and we're learning to be free. Yeah. Learning to be free. Oh, teach us to be free. Teach us to be free.
Well, there we go. Reckless Resurrected. I hope this has been, I know this has been long. I hope it's been beneficial for you to think through these things. I would recommend, looking at your situation. There is a spectrum here. And I don't know your situation, spiritually, religiously, whatever. But there is this place where we can become so very transactional that we live in fear of slipping up, that God or the Creator or the universe will whack us down because we've done this wrong and we've done that wrong. And to me, that is a bad way of living. A good way of living is to look around and see the generosity, the love, the beauty of the creation and the Creator, and to say, that is my nature. That's the spirit that's been breathed into me. That's the spirit that I'm going to live in for everyone else. Well, thanks for joining me for this episode of Dancin Moon Songcast. You can find all my music and all my lyrics at ScottSimpsonMusic.com. Stream me on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, anywhere else that you stream. Thanks for joining me this week. New episode every Friday. Be well.